Welcome to Treadmill Talks with Shannon Maves, a podcast for athletes and fitness enthusiasts to pass the time during mind-numbing cardio while I use my no-bullshit coaching style to educate, inspire, and entertain. I'm your host, Shannon Maves. Now let's walk and talk. Hello, and welcome to a surprise bonus episode of Treadmill Talks, the one with my holiday fit tips. As soon as I finished recording the episode about shutting the fuck up, which was actually a much nicer episode than it sounds, and if you haven't listened to it yet, you really should. But as soon as I finished recording that episode, I started thinking about how my original plan was to release this episode the following week. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to release them both before Thanksgiving. Because the holidays don't just mean Christmas time. And I think a lot of us can benefit from at least some of the tips that I'm going to give today when it comes to Thanksgiving too. And just so you know, my holiday fit tips aren't just a list of how to stick to your plan perfectly during the holidays. Far from it. Because I'm a coach who teaches balance, and balance looks different for everyone. So while some people may want to stick to their plan during the holidays, others might want to indulge a bit more. And I support either one, as long as the decision you make is one that is going to make you feel happy. But if you decide to stick to your plan and ultimately feel like you are missing out, or you start to experience feelings of restriction, then I do not support that. And if you decide to indulge a bit more, when you know that it is at the expense of your physical or mental health, then I do not support that either. Which is why I'm recording this episode. Because I want to help you navigate whichever scenario you find yourself in this year, so that you can go into the new year feeling successful, proud, and happy. So let's start with my first tip, which is to stay hydrated. As the weather gets colder, it can become more of a challenge to drink enough water. But being sure to stay hydrated, which I want to remind you does mean electrolytes too, will help you recover from whatever training you're currently doing, and it will help your digestion too. If you're in a fat loss phase, or perhaps you are just trying to limit the amount of food you're eating over the holidays for whatever reason, then drinking plenty of water will help to keep your muscles hydrated and fuller, which will be especially crucial for recovery due to your limited nutrient intake. That limited food intake can also make a good poop harder to come by as well, which is another reason why consuming enough water during a fat loss phase is so imperative. Because nobody wants to strain their asshole so hard trying to take a shit that it gives them hemorrhoids before they have to deal with the already uncomfortable visit to their in-laws. And staying hydrated will help to keep digestion regular. Yay for healthy poops and no hemorrhoids! Again, though, staying hydrated means getting enough water and electrolytes. So please don't forget to keep sodium, potassium, and magnesium high as well, because all of that can also help you to feel less hungry, which can subsequently make it a bit easier to adhere to whatever nutrition plan you're following. And if you're not in a fat loss phase and you're like, fuck it, bro, I'm gonna eat all the stuffing and potatoes and pie and shit, nom, 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 then drinking plenty of water will help to flush that shit out so that you don't retain water and you can digest it all a bit more easily. My next tip is to be mindful of food choices and portion sizes. If you are trying not to overindulge, then I recommend sticking to the one plate rule, which is simply don't eat more than you can fit on one plate. If you happen to have an option of different plate sizes, using a smaller plate can also help to control portion sizes as well. When you're loading up that one plate with food, think about filling half of it with fruits or veggies, and then split the other half of the plate evenly between a lean protein and some type of carb source or other fun food. Thanksgiving food is pretty easy to use as an analogy for this example. You'd fill half of your plate with whatever veggie is being served. So, I don't know, maybe green beans or asparagus or something. And if you don't want to eat half a plate full of just green beans or asparagus, then load up with some mixed greens or something to make a little salad or something. And then you would split the other half of the plate evenly between the turkey and the mashed potatoes or the mac and cheese or the stuffing or something. I like this method because it ensures that you get your protein, produce, carbs, and fats while still allowing yourself to enjoy something a bit more indulgent like mac and cheese or whatever you choose. But if your goal is more along the lines of being fully present and living in the moment, or allowing yourself to let go a bit and be more flexible with food, then I would advise you to honor your hunger. Just because you're not tracking your food or following a nutrition plan for the day doesn't mean it needs to be a day to go completely YOLO on the gravy. Be present with your loved ones, but also with yourself. Eat slowly and check in with your body to see how it's doing after every few bites or so. If you're still hungry after your one plate, then feel free to make your grandma happy and go back for seconds. But I would recommend trying to listen to your internal hunger cues and stop eating once you feel about 80% full. Because you're probably trying to save room for dessert, right? And I promise that shit will taste better when you're not stuffed to the max. Another tip that I think is good for anyone, regardless of their goals for the holiday season, is to stay active. Something as simple as going for a walk after a big meal can help to get digestion going, and it can also be a great opportunity to have some family bonding time. And this tip goes beyond just during the actual holiday event, like family dinner. Try to find active things to do during the entire holiday season. I know it's tempting to get in your PJs and cozy up on the couch to watch Netflix at 5 p.m. when the sun goes down. I'm still pissed about daylight savings, but try to find some active things to do. Obviously, this will depend where you live, but this time of year, there is usually tons of stuff going on that doesn't involve sitting on your ass. Go walk around a neighborhood to look at Christmas lights, or go ice skating or snowboarding or something. I also love this time of year in the gym because it's typically a lot quieter. It's kind of like the calm before the New Year's resolution or storm. Typically, it's quieter because there is so much going on this time of year, and everyone is busier than usual. And because we're all so busy, the holidays can be an extremely stressful time for everyone, which is why there's no need to add even more stress when it comes to food. So if you've got an event coming up and you're not sure what kind of food they're going to be serving, and your goal is to keep things a bit tighter with your nutrition, offer to bring an appetizer. This allows you to bring something more nutritious, like a veggie dish or something. That way, if all of the rest of the food being served is more calorically dense, you know there's at least something there for you to munch on. And you're also going to be the host's new favorite guest. And if hitting your protein goal is more of a challenge for you, I highly advise you eat something high in protein right before you head out. This will not only help you to hit your protein goal, but since protein is the most satiating macronutrient, it will also help to take that edge off with your hunger, which can help to reduce the temptation to eat all of the other stuff that is being offered that maybe doesn't align with your goals. Which brings me to a good point that isn't necessarily as much of a tip, but more just general advice. If you know you are going to be eating a more indulgent meal later on, it can be good to try to keep your meals throughout the rest of the day a little bit on the lighter side. However, you do not want to starve yourself before the meal. It may seem counterintuitive to some, but when you ignore your body's hunger cues and try to save your calories for later, it tends to lead to feelings of extreme hunger, which is when your eyes become bigger than your stomach and you actually become more likely to overindulge. So yes, if you want to try to keep things a little bit tighter throughout the day leading up to the meal, that can be a good way to control total calories. But no, you do not want to skip meals. Even if you are letting yourself loosen the reins a bit, prioritize lean protein, fruits and veggies, and eat at the same times you normally would. And eat that high protein snack right before you go. Once you get to whatever event it is you're going to, I really want to remind you that it is 1000% okay to say no. I'm sure the host of the party or whatever is dying for you to try some dish that they are super proud of, but don't be afraid to set some boundaries. Tell them it looks delicious, but you're going to pass. Or maybe offer to split it with someone else. Just take a bite to try it, or ask if you can have some to take home to try later on when you're maybe not quite so full. Even if you aren't actually full, you can just pretend like you are. And if you don't actually want to eat it later, give it to someone else. Hell, give it to a homeless person on your way home. That one is my favorite. But okay. I'm sure some of you are wondering if I'm going to discuss one of the biggest challenges during this time of year, booze. Because as much as I'm sure we all love our families, having that many different personalities in one room can become a bit overwhelming. And sometimes you just need a fucking drink to take the edge off. Here are my tips when it comes to alcohol. Number 1, set a drink limit before you go and stick to it. That's the tricky part, is actually sticking to it. Which is why I recommend telling someone about your drink limit so that they can hold you to it, like an accountability buddy. Because nobody wants to be remembered as the loose-lipped aunt or uncle that everybody dreads seeing next holiday. Another tip is to have a full glass of water between every drink. Right when you get there, ask for a glass of water. Then get a glass of wine. After you finish your glass of wine, drink another full glass of water. Then you can get a second glass of wine, and so on. This will not only help to ensure that you stay hydrated, especially since alcohol is a diuretic, but it will also help to slow down your drinking, making it easier to stick to that limit. And do your best to try to limit the super sugary holiday drinks. I love me a good glass of eggnog or a spiked hot chocolate, but those drinks are not very macro-friendly. And even if you're not concerned about that this year, too many of those are going to make you feel like hot garbage after a while. Honestly, though, most of the time people blame booze for their weight gain. It isn't actually because of the calories in the drinks themselves, but more so the alcohol's ability to lower inhibitions, making it easier to say yes to dessert when you may have passed on it if you were in a more sober state of mind. Which is why I also recommend keeping some foods on hand at your house that do fit whatever plan you're trying to follow. Because if you accidentally find yourself stumbling through your front door after a holiday party and you're like, oh shit, I'm still hungry, you're going to be less likely to DoorDash Taco Bell, and you'll be more likely to go for whatever you have prepped in your fridge. But the last tip I want to give is probably the most important tip, which is if you do end up overindulging, move on. One day off your plan is not the end of the world. Do not do tons of cardio to try to burn off the calories you ate, and do not restrict yourself from eating the next day to try to make up for it. Get back on whatever plan has been working for you, and remember that the goal should always be progress, not perfection. And if you're someone who likes visuals, then I've actually linked one of my older YouTube videos in the show notes for you. It's a video that goes over basically everything I've just discussed, but you're also going to get to see me do an impression of an old Midwestern lady wearing an ugly Christmas sweater with a cat that lights up, as well as a cameo from my little kitty, Snoop Cat. And if you know anyone that could benefit from hearing or being reminded of some of these tips, then please share this episode with them. You could also take a screenshot to share to your social media with a link to this episode to help get it out there for people who might be silently struggling with this type of stuff. Or leave a review to help bump it up in the rankings on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for listening to Treadmill Talks. If this episode taught you something, lit a fire under your ass, or at least helped you forget how long you've been walking in place, please leave a review or take a screenshot to share on your social media. Don't forget to tag me @Shannon Maves so I can give you some love right back. And thanks again for listening to my Treadmill Talk.